the records are not open. All right. Let me check in. Okay, I do see an initial Vega incarnation. Okay, so so I think most of us started off in either Lyra or Vega or both. And I think the original trauma that you went through actually happened in Vega. Okay, so pretty much what I'm seeing is that you had a really beautiful, simple life in the Vega system. So you weren't a military, you weren't part of the Starfleet, you were just an artist and a healer during that time. So you were, pretty much living a blissful, stress-free kind of life, and everything was pretty great in the Vega system. I oftentimes compare Vega to the Avatar movie. I think the planets looked a lot like Avatar. I think even the beings that were in Avatar kind of looked like Vega beings. So they had kind of like some cat-like features, but they were blue-skinned beings. So I think some of these movies are sometimes like a combination of different systems, like they'll bring elements of Lyra or Sirius or Vega in these movies, but I would say for the most part it's probably the closest depiction that we could think of, and when we're trying to imagine what these places were like. And so they lived in complete harmony with their planets, okay? So at this time, you had no interest in technology. You had no interest in being part of the Starfleet. You were a healer. You used to grow medicinal plants. You're very much into plant medicine, okay? A lot of the Ayurvedic principles actually originated from Vega. So a lot of the Vedic astrology, the Ayurvedic, I think medicine came from Vega, but it was, I think, further developed in Sirius. So you have a happy life, and I do kind of pick up that your current partner is like a twin flame. Okay, she's been with you throughout multiple incarnations. It's kind of like she almost inhabits a lot of maybe more of the masculine qualities. I know that sounds really weird, but it's almost like you two, even though you represent as masculine, sometimes you come across very feminine, and she might represent as feminine, but she comes across very masculine. So you two really kind of complement and balance each other out. Now, since you two are together, it makes me feel that you have a big mission together. Because twin flames oftentimes get caught up in karmic, they have to deal with clearing a lot of karma between them, and they're dealing with a lot of mirroring and a lot of kind of runner-chaser syndrome. I don't see that with either one of you two. So a lot of the karmic issues that you guys maybe have had with each other, you cleared out a long time ago. So she was actually with you in Vega. And so a lot of her story is going to mimic yours in a certain extent, but she did have, I think, some experiences separate from you. Okay, so maybe she's a little bit more aligned with the Pleiades or with some other star system. But so what I see is that everything was great until the Lyra Draconian Wars, and that was the initial trauma. Okay, and it seemed like it's been kind of a theme that you guys have been trying to work through and overcome ever since. It's kind of like each iteration you kind of go through, you overcome it, you go through it again, you overcome it. It's like you're getting better and better and better with it each time. And so pretty much what happened in Vega was that they did have Starfleet. They had a pretty decent I would say, fleet of ships. I mean, I would say they were probably a little bit more prepared than the other Lyran planets and star systems, because these were people that were really practical. They were Mother Goddess consciousness. They were prepared, okay? They actually didn't want to be part of the Lyra Draconian Wars. They didn't want to get sucked into it, but they ultimately had to. I mean, it was like they were kind of forced, their hand was forced, and they had to get involved. So during that time, I'm just seeing a lot of chaos. You and your partner running towards a Vega refugee ship, and things were chaotic, and you felt very frustrated because I'm just seeing this level of frustration of like, I can't control anything. I can't have any control of anything that's happening. I'm at the mercy of fate, of the Vega fleet. I don't know what to do. And I think you swore to yourself that you were never going to be put in that position again, that you were going to have mastery over your destiny, because you felt totally out of control, totally at the mercy of outside individuals and events, and you hated that feeling. And I think that's why you're creating this movie, is because you're trying to prevent, you're trying to give like a cautionary tale to humans, like, hey, this is something that could happen, okay, if we're not prepared, okay, because this has always been your mission. Like, I want to share this information, I want to share my story, because I don't want people to lose everything, okay, I don't want entire planets to be destroyed, okay, so this has been kind of like your overall journey, okay? So I'm just seeing a level of frustration, a level of grief and sadness, and a feeling of being out of control. And I think there was some tragedy that happened along with this. I think you and your partner survived, but there was a lot of family members that got killed, and there was nothing you could do to save them, and it was just a shit show, okay, total shit show, okay. Now, obviously, you were on a Vega ship, so most of the Vega ships ended up in Orion or Sirius. So your particular ship ended up in Sirius, okay. So that's where it ultimately. So you and your partner, even though you were once one soul, you split and you became two different souls. But you two were always very connected. I mean, it was always like, even throughout your time in Sirius, you were very connected. And then you guys had incarnations in Orion together, So with Sirius, I do see that you had incarnations as different types of beings. So when you were in Vega, you were maybe like a feline humanoid hybrid. Then when you were in Sirius, kind of a canine humanoid hybrid. And there might have been some incarnations you had where you were kind of like a amphibian type of being, so maybe you were having that kind of experience, So you kind of played around with different forms, but I think you felt very comfortable in that canine humanoid form. That was, I guess, your favorite form. Okay.
That's right.
You don't like being fully human because you feel like you're sacrificing a lot of your canine qualities. Okay. But it's almost like you had to be here on Earth because there's not canine humanoid hybrids here on Earth, but so you had to kind of try to fit in. But it's like me coming here being in an Earth human suit, when I'm actually Arcturian, and I kind of feel like out of place. But but you kind of try to fit retrofit as much as you can here. But so it's kind of like the case with you and your partner. But you've, I think, experimented with different forms. Like you would sometimes have an incarnation where you were a Syrian amphibian being, or you were a Syrian cat being, or you were a Syrian whatever, maybe even reptilian, but
Sure.
but you like the canine, you like that but not full canine. You liked having the hybridization with the humanoid. So you were trying to rebuild after the Vega catastrophe. Okay, so initially you got involved with some, I think, some really basic technological projects, because Sirius was in a state of rebuilding, and there was, I think, because the population was growing so much, they were colonizing different planets, so
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, they were just kind of going off and colonizing this planet and that planet. And there was a lot of, actually, a lot of people don't know this, but there was actually conflicts in Sirius too initially. So that's why these reptilian beings were coming in, because they knew that Sirius was in this building phase, and there was a lot of diversity of beings that lived in Sirius. So, so you were on one of the smaller planets, is what I'm seeing, that probably didn't have as much support as some of the bigger planets. And it was one of the ones that I'm trying to see, like, kind of like you, they had some technology, but not enough. Okay. So that's why these beings thought, oh, we'll take advantage of, the Syrian situation. Okay. And it's kind of how the reptilians were kind of sneaky. Okay. So they initially populated Sirius C when Sirius C still existed. And then when Sirius C got destroyed, they started populating aspects of Sirius A and B. Okay, I'm not sure if this planet was in Sirius B or Sirius A. That's the only thing I'm not real clear on. I don't know. Maybe you know better than I do, but
I don't, because
yeah.
I know that there were so many cetacean and aquatic species from the Sirius constellation, but you have to remember that, it's called the dog star for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have the Dogon tribe in Africa who used to speak of canine beings who came from Sirius, but I was never really told or shown in my downloads or intuition of, was it A, B, or C? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not really 100% sure too. I'm getting the sense that it was actually B, but
That's what I wrote in the film.
Yeah.
It was Sirius B in
B.
the film. You can see it on screen, but that was guessing.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of getting the sense it was B, because it was kind of like some sort of remote little planet.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it wasn't like one of the major ones in Sirius A, is what I'm seeing. So I think it was Sirius B, and I think the population, and the other thing about Sirius, and maybe you know this, is that they didn't have a lot of land mass. Okay, so they had a lot of watery planets. I don't know if you ever seen the movie Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets, but
was it a cartoon? Was it animated?
It was initially animated, but the first part of it's animated or CGI, but then the rest of it's humans and
Okay,
yeah.
No, I haven't.
You should watch that movie, because the opening scene reminds me a lot of Sirius B.
Okay.
And I think it'll give you some ideas for your show. But
what's the name of the film again?
Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets.
I've seen that. I
Yeah,
haven't.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's very Syrian, very
I
Syrian.
have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even the beings looked very Syrian. The ones that lived on the beach, and they were, I don't know what they called them. I don't remember the name of the beings, but it was. I watched it recently for like the third time, and I was like, wow, this is. This reminds me a lot of Sirius, but
Yeah, they have
but
pearls.
but they had the pearls, yeah. So and they had the little animals that would poop out the pearls, you
Yeah,
know.
that's
So
right.
yeah, um, so they had these, so they had these very watery planets, and so they had this population boom, and they didn't know what to do with these beings, so they were constantly building new cities, floating cities on the ocean, and they had like a roadway system in Sirius A that kind of connected some of these peninsulas and islands. And I've been on Sirius, so I have memories of Sirius like you do. Even though I'm not Syrian, but I remember being on Sirius, and it was pretty technologically advanced. At least Sirius A was, but Sirius B was struggling. Okay, they didn't have the technology, so I think when Sirius C got destroyed, the reptilian beings were thinking, oh, well, maybe we can, take over Sirius B, so. And they were doing kind of like in a sneaky kind of way, so it was kind of like they had this knack of presenting something that was really shitty, but making it look like gold, like it was really cool, like oh, if you join us, we're gonna make things really great, and we're gonna build, and and so, and they did this on Vega, they did it on Lyra, they did it, they're doing it here on Earth too. I mean, they've been doing this, yeah, they've been doing this, so they give you a raw deal, but then they kind of make it seem like, oh, it's the best thing ever, and that's what their modus operandi. They've been doing that for millennia, So, and so so I think during this time that you were talking about how you got recruited to be kind of like part of their, I guess, military, their military. Um, it was almost like being recruited in the military here on Earth, where a lot of times people that get recruited is because they have no other options, okay, or they feel like they have no other options, So it's kind of like, well, we're kind of floundering here on this system, and maybe we'll find our fortunes this way, or we'll, have a better life this way, So, and a lot, I mean, I'm prior military, so I got sucked into that deal too.
Okay.
Yeah, so they'll promise you like all this stuff, but then you kind of more or less sell your body over to the military,
That's
kind
right.
of, they control all of you. So if they tell you got to take vaccines, you take the vaccines. If they tell you got to take certain medications, you take it. If they want to do something to your mouth or whatever to your physical body, you do it, because now they own you, okay? And that was the same kind of deal that you had with these reptilian beings from Orion, okay? So they were just trying to recruit different species of beings, because each species of beings had their own, I guess, qualities, okay? Like maybe dog people, or attributes, yeah. So baby dog people were able to do things that maybe other species of beings weren't able to do. So um, so they had a good reason. For the most part, it was kind of similar to being like a stormtrooper in Star Wars. Okay, like you were just part of the system and you got assimilated into the system. Okay, um, and uh, and then you got sent to that. You guys got sent to different missions on different systems, and
Yeah, that's right.
it was every mission was really different, or there was different elements about it. So at first it seemed pretty exciting, but then you guys started figuring out, the deal, so that you've pretty much signed over your lives to these beings, and that was, I think, when you got sent to that one planet and you got left for dead, and you were found by the Pleiadian police force, so if you want to call it that. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So So that police force was actually part of the what we call the Galactic Federation, and the Galactic Federation was pretty much kind of a alliance between benevolent star races that wanted to keep peace and unity within the galaxy, okay, because they're trying to prevent another Lyra situation from happening, pretty much.
That adds up.
Yeah. So you were picked up by this branch of the Galactic Federation, okay. So these were like kind of like what I would call similar to like the Green Berets, or like I don't know what or Navy SEALs, where
Yeah,
they
I
were,
see that.
yeah, kind of like a specialized group, um, so they picked you up, and initially, yeah, they noticed that you had, the the uniform of the V race, or the V people.
Their helmets.
Yeah, the helmets, yeah, but I think they recognized quickly you weren't one of them. Like you were saying, like they knew you weren't one of them. So then you were, I think, initially interrogated, but then when they realized that you were just kind of like a slave in the system, they were like, oh, well, he's got some good qualities, And Pleiadians are very empathic, so they pick up on these kind of things very quickly. So it wasn't like they were interrogating you for, weeks on end. It was just more like, 1 or 2 sessions, and then they figured out what the deal was. And I think they knew about, or you told them about your partner, and that you wanted to get your partner out of this system. So that was like a negotiation chip for
Exactly.
you. Yeah. So then you became kind of like a double agent for them. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you were pretending to be still a V person, but you were reporting to the Pleiadians, okay, and helping them to gather intelligence so that they can figure out how they can best assist the resistance fighters that were the kind, what they call the Black League resistance fighters that came out of.
Yeah, I've heard about them.
Yeah, the Orion. So the Black League resistance fighters, just kind of some information about them. They weren't entirely good, but they weren't entirely bad. Okay, so when they asked the Galactic Federation for assistance, the Galactic Federation knew, they knew what the deal was, but they figured, okay, maybe we can use them to help bring peace and unity throughout the Orion system, so they agreed to assist them with technology, with supplies, provisions, that sort of thing, so you were kind of like a double agent for the Black League, for the Galactic Federation, and also for the V people, or whatever you want to call them. So, and so sometimes, and during this time, I think you had no interaction with your partner whatsoever. And
that's right. We lost touch for a long time.
Yeah, it was kind of like she thought you were dead. Okay, she
did. Yeah. That's absolutely what we have in the story.
Yeah, she thought you were dead. So you were just continuing to do your work. So you're trying with the understanding that they were going to get her out. Okay, but I think at times you got a little frustrated because they were promising you that, but then they were kind of like, well, we don't know if now's the right time, and we gotta wait. And you were, I think, kind of like, well, okay, I made this. This was our agreement, So there's a little bit of frustration there, but I think for the most part, you knew that they were going to stay with their word, okay. But there was some doubt sometimes, like, well, I don't know. Are they just using me? What's the deal? I don't know these beings. Because this was your first time interacting with Pleiadians, okay? And not all the Pleiadians were, hunky-dory, squeaky clean either, okay? There were some. Right. There was some that actually worked for the space pirates, or they defected to the space pirates, So there were some bad Pleiadians out there, but but you had no choice because that was like your only chance to get your partner out of the V system, or the Empire as I call it. The V.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had originally was going to call them the Empire, not to cut you off.
Yeah.
But because that was from Star Wars.
With Star Wars, yeah, you had to kind of come up with something different. Yeah. Totally.
There are 3 different reptilian clans that are their own species, but they're clans, and they all start with the letter V. So there's the Vlash, the Vril, and the Vlad. And each clan base of the sauroid species are their own actually reptilian race that all have different hierarchical statuses in terms of like their whether it's, like I said earlier, whether it's military or whether it's like kings and queens, royalty type of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of reptilian factions have their own what is it called, royalty hierarchy system, and so there's the Vlad, the Vril, and the Vlash.
Gotcha.
So not to use those formal terms in my film and get myself in trouble.
Yeah.
I call them the V's.
Yeah, got it. Okay, that makes sense. And I saw the same thing in the records, like, and actually the reptilian races originated from another universe. They just got kicked out of the old universe and got deposited in Draco, and they were pissed off, so.
I've heard that.
Yeah, so, but they do have a hierarchical system, and the dragons are at the top of the hierarchy, but
That's right.
The dragons were kind of doing their own thing, and the, what I call the warrior caste reptilians were pissed off because they wanted to be top tier. They didn't want the dragons. So the dragons were kind of doing their own thing, okay? And the dragons were kind of neutral. They weren't necessarily totally good, but they weren't totally bad either.
You're right. Yeah, they weren't. They're not, even now today, the dragons still exist, and they're not like malevolent, like you said, more neutral.
They're neutral. Yeah, they just kind of do their thing, and they'll help out when they think when it benefits them, okay, or they.
Right.
But they're not always going to help out, okay? So a lot of people think, I have this relationship with this dragon, and it's like, well, the dragon has a relationship with you because it's benefiting the dragon, not because it's benefiting you, So, so you have to be kind of, I think, cognizant of, where dragons, But I would say for the most part, they tend to be more neutral. Okay. Yeah. So, so getting back to your story. So it sounds like this is resonating a lot with you. Like it's
right into alignment with what we've collected over the years.
Yeah. Gotcha. So it looks like a lot of what I'm picking up from the records is pretty similar, or if not on.
Could you clarify? Can I ask a clarifying question?
Oh yeah, sure. Please do. Yeah.
So in our version of the story. And through some memories, I had another romantic partner.
Okay.
From the Sirius planet where we were canines.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
And my partner now, Lauren, who I agree with you on the twin flame aspect, had existed in multiple lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
It was always told to me, or it always came to me through intuition, that she was on that Pleiadian force.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I had met her through that, like you said, the Galactic Federation. Now, maybe she was Pleiadian Galactic Federation, or maybe she was part of the Black League.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly sure. I'm not sure, but my
You're talking about Lauren or this other person?
Lauren was the one who found me.
Oh, gotcha. So she's the Pinar character.
That's right.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
And then Hakana was another one from the Sirius planet.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
So I was going to ask you to clarify if you could tell us any more about her. And now, I know that she was another love interest of mine, and we have it written in the story. This is something that I sort of made up for the sake of the film.
Yeah.
But that her character, Hakana, she actually dies. Like, she didn't make it. In our version of the story that we're telling, my close personal friend from the Sirius planet died.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
She didn't make it out, ultimately. And I ended up with Pinar.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
And her and I both survived after the conflicts changed, and we kind of lived happily ever after. So I was wondering if you could clarify the difference between those two people. Maybe it's the same person in different incarnations overlapping, or maybe
I'm kind of getting it's the same personality, but different iterations of that personality. So I think this dog being that you were with was the same soul, but then when she passed away, another iteration of her appeared as Pinar. Okay, so
Sure, that makes sense.
but it's the same. So it's the same being, or the same soul, but sometimes we'll have multi-dimensional aspects of ourselves. Okay,
so would you say that's pretty much the case, that she was both Hakana and Pinar?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And we weren't sure what happened to her. Like I said, Lauren and I were the writers of this film, but we're also connected to the backstory as well.
Yeah.
So her and I just weren't sure whatever happened to Hakana. We wrote it in the story that the general killed her because he found out ultimately that. This is one of the things I didn't tell you. We had refugees.
Okay.
That escaped the planet we're from.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
And they were almost like a type of leveraging tool.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
He's always told us that if you guys double cross us, or you break the rules, or you do something.
Right, got it. Okay.
Your family's punished, right?
Yeah, that was pretty common, and that was how the reptilians got people to join forces. Was that they would a lot of times threaten, oh, we're going to kill your family if you don't.
That's exactly what they did.
Yeah,
so they used our planet.
Yeah.
We don't know the name of the planet either. We call it Sirian, by the way.
Yeah.
With an X.
Yeah.
Xirian.
Yeah.
Sirian.
Yeah.
That's what we call it. I don't know the name.
Yeah.
So we just wrote it in. So Hakana finds out that there are refugees that had escaped.
Mm-hmm.
And she was trying to help them. When I got out, and Kingaku, the general, found out that the Pinar had rescued me and that I was still alive, and that I was trying to rescue Hakana, then they went back and they killed our families.
Okay.
And then when that happened, Hakana, she kind of goes, she goes crazy and she's heartbroken, and she ultimately gets killed by the general too, and that's what happens in our version of the story. But we don't really know. We don't truly know if that's the case or not. Whatever happened to her, maybe she lived or maybe she died, and that's all I know is that I ended up romantically with Pinar. In the end,
kind of what I picked up was that you kept asking Pinar and her group, like, where's Akana, trying to locate Akana, but they were having a hard time finding her, and maybe it was because of this backstory of, she's gone, but we don't want to tell him. I don't know. There was some sort of there was some reason why they didn't extract her out right away, and I think it was because maybe all this other stuff was happening. I don't know, but what the sense that I got was that you never really reunited with that Syrian dog being anymore. Like she was kind of out of the picture, is what. And I don't know exactly the reason why. I'm trying to look at the records, and I think she either got killed, like maybe the general found out that you had escaped, and I don't know, maybe he was trying to figure out where you ended up, and she couldn't tell him, so he got mad and killed her. I don't know.
That's sort of what we wrote.
Yeah, so but I don't know about the refugees and all that. That might have been an aspect of the story too, but the story sounds kind of similar to Valerian. I mean, I don't know. There's a little bit of elements similar to Valerian, but some differences too. But then I think ultimately you ended up with Pinar, so she was like a love interest, okay? And she was actually another aspect of this, twin flame soul. So it wasn't like you really lost her, even though it felt like you did there for a while. But then you found, love again with Pinar. And I think ultimately, kind of what I'm seeing, I don't know if this correlates with the story that you guys have, but ultimately what I see is that you were constantly on search and rescue missions. I think to pull out um, like prisoners of war from Rigel or Bellatrix or Betelgeuse, which were all, systems in the Orion system. And so there was a lot of search and rescue missions. There was a lot of intelligence type situations going on.
That's what Bernard did full time.
Yeah. And the search and rescue. And then ultimately, I think this took many years, but Orion did eventually, come to unity consciousness, but it took a freaking long time. And at that point, I think you and Pinar were asked if you wanted to assist Planet Earth. But it took a lot of years. So it was like a lot of years of conflicts of the situation, and then it was like, oh, well, now everything's unified in Orion. But what happened in Orion was that, those V people, or those Empire people, if you want to call it that, they escaped to Earth, because they didn't want to be part of the unification. They were like, fuck the unification. We'll just find a new system to take over.
Right.
Yeah. So they ended up in this new system, and, so they were, infiltrating in Atlantis, trying to get Atlantis to turn against Lemuria, because they knew if Atlantis destroyed Lemuria, that Earth was going to plunge into the third dimension, and they would have bigger control. Okay. Yeah. So.
That adds up.
Yeah. So your story continues on Earth. Okay. And so you and Pinar, or your twin flame, Lauren, whatever you want to call her, you two reconnected again in Atlantis, and I think part of what you were trying to do was trying to prevent these Orion factions from taking over, but you were unsuccessful in that. So in a way, kind of what I see with a lot of folks that have had incarnations in Atlantis is that they're trying to fix the mistakes that happened in Atlantis in this lifetime. Okay, so
I see.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, oh, we weren't successful with that, but now in this lifetime, because the United States is considered to be the new Atlantis, so now we get another opportunity to change Earth's destiny by shifting everything more to the light, okay, instead of everything going to the dark, okay. So it's kind of like the story just keeps continuing, okay. And I'm not sure what you guys, I don't know if you guys were scientists or what you were doing in Atlantis, but I think you initially were working for the Atlantean government, and then you realized that, oh, things are not totally on the up and up, and we need to figure out what's going on. Kind of like what you're doing nowadays, okay? Like, okay, things are not in the up and up, with our government and everything else.
That's right.
We're trying to figure out what's happening. We need to start informing people, that stuff's happening. And the Atlanteans, they were too attached to the material things. They were too attached to the technology. They didn't want to give it up. So it was unsuccessful in Atlantis. And Atlantis ultimately destroyed themselves. Okay. And I think it's kind of like you and your twin flame. You've incarnated throughout various incarnations on Earth, trying to expand consciousness, trying to expand or tell this cautionary tale to people in order for them to understand what's really happening. But maybe it appears to be fiction, because obviously if you did this as a documentary, it might be too controversial. But
that's right.
But if you I think depict it as maybe like a sci-fi thing, but it's,
which is what we're doing.
Yeah, people will be more apt to accept it and watch it, and then it just gets into their consciousness,
Exactly.
kind of like
That's
the
exactly
Matrix.
how we designed it,
Yeah,
the way that we did,
yeah,
for that exact reason.
yeah. It's kind of like you're seeping it into their consciousness, like kind of like the Matrix series. I really think that's a documentary. That's not. It's
I
not.
do too. We did a web series about it. I can send it to you if you want to see it.
Oh yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah. So. So now this gets us to nowadays. Okay, we have a few minutes left, so I don't know if you have any questions or anything that.
No.
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 Okay. Okay.
I've
So.
just been taking notes.
Okay. So. But yeah, your story is really fascinating, and it's interesting how much the Akashic records correlates with, the story that you've picked up from your own channeling and your own soul memories. So that tells me that you have great past life recall. Okay, and and obviously, maybe I have a slightly different interpretation on a few things, but it seems like it correlates. But the other thing I'm seeing too is I think part of your mission in this lifetime is not only to awaken people or to caution them on what could happen, but it's also, I think, to create a connection with these higher dimensional beings. So I kind of see like an emissary role where you and Lauren might be connecting with these, with these Pleiadian beings that that are part of the Federation or part of these overseer groups that are constantly,
Yes.
overseeing Earth right now.
Yes.
So I see your role evolving past just making films.
I like that.
Yeah. So I see that as being kind of more the direction of, hey, we're helping to expand consciousness with these stories, but then what do we do after that? So it's almost like you're preparing the human masses to become galactic citizens at this point. So that's the next.
Like ambassadors.
Yeah, like ambassadors. Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like, okay, now that we got them, I think starting to remember their own soul memories, or because there's a lot of humans that are connected with Sirius and Orion. Okay. Uh, how do we prepare them for the next step, which is to become fifth dimensional citizens of the galaxy? Okay, instead of just being Earth humans. Okay. So that's going to be the next phase of your mission. Okay. And so I'm really excited that for this project, because it's going to it's going to have a big impact on the collective consciousness. Okay, where people are just going to be like, wow, I can relate to this story. Like I don't know why, but I can relate to it. Okay,
So I did what's called as how, if you've ever heard of people imbuing, like say for example, charging a physical item or imbuing something with energy and intention.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote the script and the film in such a way that it's charged
Mm-hmm.
with what I call incarnational lineage triggers.
Okay.
So they might see a little scene play out, because the first film, it's only 3 minutes long.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But it's what's called as a proof of concept, so it'll play out almost more like a trailer than it will its own standalone film. And it is only 3 minutes long because that's how long it needs to be. It doesn't need to be any longer at this time.
Yeah, got it.
And I coded the scenes with memory triggers for people who were in the situations that I was in.
Gotcha.
And saw the things that I saw, who were there as well in their own way or on their own respective planet and on their own respective species.
Yeah,
they
gotcha.
all experienced similar things.
Mm-hmm.
And were in the presence and the energy of specific beings, that when they see the scenes, it will unpack on a DNA level and an emotional level and a subconscious level, where it might not even make sense to them right away, but it'll unpack slowly, because these incarnational lineage triggers are written into the film.
Interesting. Wow. So if they were part of that same situation, it would trigger
an emotional response.
Yeah, I think that's really, I could see that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's a lot of what I do when I post videos on YouTube. Is I just take people's readings and post them on YouTube, but I'm trying to help people to remember who they are through these stories, that are coming through on these videos, so so the person that does the video editing for me might put certain scenes in there that might trigger a memory for somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
that's the formula.
Yeah, and that's what. So I'm kind of doing my version of it, and it sounds like you guys are doing your version of it too. But
I love that. I look forward to seeing whatever you have produced. If you end up doing that documentary, I would love to watch that or help if I can in some way. And
oh yeah, totally. Yeah, we're currently working on it. So we're doing kind of like the main study aspect of it, where we're looking at thousands of Akashic readings and looking at trends, so what are the trends that we see with Sirian star seeds? What are the trends we see with Arcturian star seeds or Pleiadian star seeds? And it might be relationship trends. It might be, maybe the careers they choose, or maybe health conditions.
Medical things, right?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. So. And we're trying to see how did this influence the history on planet Earth for the last 100 years, so how, or I would say, yeah, because I think most of them started coming in around 1947-ish, sort of. So how did this affect, the history of the planet since World War II, so. So that's part of our whole reason for doing that. But yeah, I would love for you to be a part of that if you want to be. Or
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the goal for this film, it's actually, I didn't tell you what it's called. I apologize.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's called OMA, which is an acronym.
OMA. Okay.
Acronym.
Yeah.
And we're filming it right now as we speak. We do about one scene a week.
Okay, gotcha.
It's very involved because it's like sci-fi.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah,
you wouldn't believe all the preparation it takes to prepare for one scene. So,
oh yeah, no, I can imagine.
This little 3-minute movie, is
yeah.
3 months to shoot. But the goal is to have it finished and hopefully released by the end of October.
Oh wow. Okay.
Is the goal. It could go into November depending on a few things, but that's the goal.
Yeah.
And then there will be a few small episodes after that give a little bit more backstory to what you'll see in the first film.
Yeah, gotcha.
Tony Ghazi is a very sweet friend of ours, and he's helping us, like I said, financially with that. And so that's the goal, and as soon as it's ready, I'll be happy to show you.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see it. We are quickly running out of time here. Was there any last things or anything that I have not covered? Okay.
Just want to thank you very much. I appreciate you validating so much of.
Yeah, no, no, it's kind of interesting how a lot of things that I've been seeing in the records correlates with your story, and it just gives me confirmation too, I guess. So I'm excited, and I think people need to know what actually happened in Orion. I think they need to know that. I mean,
that's my goal.
Yeah.
Because there's some healing to happen.
Oh, totally. Yeah. On an ancestral level as well as on a collective level. Yeah. So.
Awesome. Perfect.
Well,
I think Lauren is next.
Yeah, she's next, so I'll connect with her pretty soon in a few minutes. But anyway.
She's shy. She won't talk much.
Yeah. Okay. But I'll still tell her story, and she'll love it. So. Well, anyway, I'm just going to do a closing prayer because we always want to shut down the records. So I would like to thank the Masters.